Okay, everyone, welcome back. Another use cases committee presentation. You know the drill. Go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat. And let me just make sure I've got my person who's going to record. I might be able to request. Hmm, nope, won't let. Hmm. Jamie, are you able to hit the record button? For some reason, it's not letting me.
Hello. It looks like it is recording.
It is already recording. Oh,
I think so.
oh, okay, fabulous. Thank you. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. You're already seeing folks introduce themselves in the chat. Please go ahead and continue to do that. Yep, welcome back. Okay, so this week or this month, I guess, we have two presentations, maybe three, if we have enough time at the end. But we have some major representation from Colorado. Just want to say that up front. So we've got Chris Hines, who's going to be introducing some automation tools that he has done in order to kind of be able to offer better constituent services. He is a council member for the city of Denver, and so he's joining us today. And then we've also got Stephen Hill from Jefferson County. And he's going to be debuting with Scout OS, which is kind of a workflow and agent ecosystem so you can spin up your own agents. And then, if we have enough time at the end, we're going to Carrie from Scottsdale is going to go over a bit of the vibe coding that she's been doing for some dashboards and stuff. So we have got a full and packed agenda. So let's have Chris, will you be able to start us off today?
Happy to do it.
All
And how much
right.
time do you want me to take? 2 hours?
So you've got about 20 minutes that you can
Yeah.
take. Yeah,
Okay. Let's see if I have the authority to share my screen.
you should. And if not, we will have folks on hand to help.
All right. Do you see my name?
Yes, and to clarify, 20 minutes for the presentation, and then we'll have like about 5 minutes or so of Q&A. So we'll fit
Great.
that in as well.
Okay. My name is Chris Hines. I serve on Denver City Council representing District 10, which is a center city district. Just context, City of Denver has 3/4 million people. I represent about 75,000 constituents. I hear it's unusual that you have elected officials. I am the first elected official in Denver's history who uses a wheelchair to get around and the first who identifies as a member of the disability committee. Just have to put that plug. I have an undergrad in computer science. I live every day some pain points with constituent services and figured I'd put my computer science skills to the test. I have two things that I want to share with you. First, I want to talk about a newsletter platform that I created. Um, the pain point is that we have a newsletter we send out at least monthly, and as you may know, if you use Constant Contact or MailChimp, they're all quirky, and they all require you to have some technical skills that, frankly, I didn't want my staff to have to worry about. And so, a technology best practice is to separate the information from the presentation, and that's what I've tried to do. So, I've created a newsletter platform that allows you to say, I got this press release forwarded, or I know this bit of information about what's happening in Denver, and you can enter the article title, the type. We Because this is an ongoing thing, we have multiple newsletters that we send out. We might send out one a month. We might send out more than one a month, and so that's what the newsletter edition is for. And then we have some like internal information that we keep track of, like the priority. Um, if it is advertising an event, we might put the event date here, and there's no reason to tell people to attend something that has already passed. And so that's what the not useful after item is about. And then you can put in the content, you can write it, you can copy paste it. Um, we well, I'll get to that in a minute, but it has word count. You can also put a link for a button. So I've standardized the way an article works. You have the title, the picture with alt text, the text of the article, and then a button that's a call to action. And so by standardizing that, I could ask my team to use their human skills and not coding skills to create an article that would go into a newsletter. And then you submit it to the board. Out of the sake of speed, I won't actually type one out. Um, the next pain point that I have is I've got multiple team members, and we might be working on multiple editions at the same time. And so I wanted to create a workflow. So Kanban style workflow where you start with, as soon as you fill out the form that I showed you first, and you submit the article, it goes into entry. Um, I have a standard format that I want my newsletter to flow through. Actually, maybe it'd be helpful for me to show you. Get out of the way, Zoom. This is what a completed newsletter will look like. So everyone has the same header image, has a title. This is uh, an introduction that is the same as an article. It's the only one that doesn't have a picture. And then the brief is just to see if people want to read the rest of the article. That's AI generated, so I'll get to that in a bit. And then we have three priorities: representation, housing, and transportation. And each of these items are an article. So you have, as I said, the image, the title, the text, and then the call to action button. After the three values, I have two other sections: news and upcoming events. And so that's really the format of the entire newsletter and the format of each of the articles. Again, you get the image, the title, the text, and then the button. So by standardizing that, I can make the workflow um, easier. So this is um, this is actually, we're about to release a newsletter tomorrow. This is actually information for the next newsletter after that. Um, just talking about workflows, this is the newsletter that we're about to release tomorrow. So we have entry. Um, once someone says, that information that I entered actually does make sense for a newsletter, we drag it over to draft. And then in that, here's the original content that came from from that first, when we submitted the article. I can also ask my tool, the one that I built, take a look at that information, the original text, and give me some AI content. And I might use some of that, I might use all of that, and I think I have to go out and go back in. Of course, it's being slow right now. Always happens when you're demoing. But after the AI content, you would then, just because there's an AI generated content doesn't mean that you necessarily want to use that for the final article. I'll actually go back to so this is one that we actually already sent out. And I'll bring this over here and show this was the original content. This was the AI generated content, and I can put, using artificial intelligence, some things like if this is a press release that really makes the mayor look good, well, that's great. The mayor is his own elected official. I want me to look good, and so I ask AI to regenerate it and put me as the focus of the article, as opposed to the mayor or whoever's um, the source of this information. Just because AI says something doesn't mean it's necessarily the best product. And so I have a third box for final content, and this is what would actually go into the newsletter. Um, that's the text. As I said, there's a button. Here's how to customize the button with the text of the button and the link that it goes to. Um, here's an image. As you may know, your teams might not be experts on resizing images, or remember to put in alt text. So um, I have a tool that I'm using that will resize the image and reprocess it so that it'll shrink it down. Well, this is a terrible example because it actually increased the size of the image, but usually there's a pretty massive size reduction if it hasn't already been pretty heavily compressed at 36K. Um, and and then there's some settings. If, for example, this newsletter was full, I could move that article to a future edition if I wanted to with very minimal effort. And so it's really helped us put out more newsletters because we dump the information into this tool, and it we don't have to worry about HTML, we don't have to worry about CSS, we don't have to worry about a whole bunch of things that we had to worry about when we used tools in the past. So we've got image resizing, we've got AI that helps with the text, we've got separating the words, the product from the technology, um, and uh, and so what I would do after it was approved, this is what I've got a preview screen. I want to make sure that I have all the things that I'm expecting in a newsletter. So it automatically checks to make sure that I have all the things that I need. It looks like I have two introductions. So we only want to have one introduction. We don't want to introduce the introduction. So this would be something that we'd have the opportunity to edit. But the one last thing that I said I was going to cover later, I have connected this tool with my website, which is denverperfect10.com, and it's a WordPress website. And so for the sake of brevity of the email, I have a read more break that automatically, when I publish this newsletter, it automatically creates the full article in WordPress as a post, a post on the website. Um, this section right here is what makes the newsletter, and I just added a read more break that the post has the entire content, and then e-newsletter just has this top content. So if I were to go back to um, managing articles, I can, this right here is the read more break. If I wanted to, I could just click this button and oh, it's already on the content. Yeah, so here's the read more break. So that's all I have to do to add the separation of the summary, or a bit of a teaser, and then if they want more, it automatically creates a post on our website. And if they click that they want to read more, it takes us to the website, which is great for us because then we know what content is interesting to our readers because they clicked and went to the website, so we can track the clicks. Um, how far in? Uh,
How much time?
yeah.
Yeah, you've got about 6 minutes left.
Okay. So I will tease as opposed to totally going into another tool that I have. So with 3 staff and 75,000 constituents, we don't have a whole lot of uh, we have to play zone defense. And so I've created a tool. This is actually an open source tool called Zamad, and is a customer service tool that allows me to have people email in, and it creates a ticket. So so anytime someone sends an email, it creates a ticket. Here's an example of Don Koo wrote in, about traffic violations, and he heard that the Denver Police Department were not enforcing low-level traffic violations. Oh boy, for someone who wants there to be more public safety and less crime, that's not a good thing for him. Uh, Police chief is a mayoral appointee, so oh well. Um, for we'll get stay out of policy, stay in the technology. So I have created a way that you can use at AI, and the thing with the little ants around the corner, the pink border, it says that's an internal only comment. But I can ask AI to give me a summary of this and the entire email thread, and it will give me an AI generated response suggestion, again, internal only. Um, and I can use some of that or all of that. And if you see, thank you for writing, and I hear your frustration, I decided to use that exactly in my response back to this constituent. So, so that's really helped us with tracking when people write in what sorts of issues that they have. That we can also track which agencies are getting a lot of outreach from our constituents. Using AI to help us uh, get an initial response has been super helpful, because then we spend less time coming up with a thought, and more time actually massaging a proposed response. So those are just two things that I'm using in my council office to help um, make things a little more efficient. And both use AI. This, for what it's worth, because this is the Gov AI Coalition, this Claude Code helped me create this platform. So not only am I using AI in the product, I used AI to create the product. So that's what I got for now. That's me again in lovely Denver, Colorado.
Yay. Thank you, Chris. Are there any questions out there for Chris? You can go ahead and come off mute and ask your question or pop it into the chat. And if there are any questions, go ahead and do that. But when Chris first presented this to me, I was, he works for a very big city, resource constrained. I'm in a very small town, also resource constrained. And, his use cases around like the newsletter and the ticketing system is still applicable even for our teams. We struggle, being able to respond to everything. And, the newsletter is such a manual process. I mean, someone is literally going to, and emailing each one of those department heads trying to get it. So I thought that, even though he is in an elected capacity, it is transferable to a lot of us who sit on staff or work with staff.
I don't know
Um,
if you heard that, but our help desk, just someone else wrote in. So that's what
oh, is
that
that what
little
that
noise was.
ping?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it is
Very cool.
live right now.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. Okay, well, I don't see any questions, but if you do have any questions, go ahead and pop them into the chat, and we'll make sure that Chris, if you're going to stick around, you get those, or we can always follow up later.
Yeah, I'll stick around. And Nicole, best of luck today.
Oh, thank you. Yes. Um, I am also currently running for mayor, and today is election, and it is nerve-wracking and crazy. But yes, thank you. I appreciate that. All right, let's kick it over to Jefferson County, Stephen Hill, and the Scout OS team. Take us away.
All right, thanks, Nicole. So I'm Stephen with Jefferson County. I work on the emerging tech team. And like every other jurisdiction, you have a help desk, a service desk that gets thousands of calls, a lot of how do I reset my PIN? How do I submit a ServiceNow ticket? And if you've looked at the ServiceNow pricing, you know that they've gone to a much higher model for adding AI tools. So we wanted to see if we could build something that was safe, secure, and reliable with our own platform in-house, which is Scout OS. So today we'll be going over the use case of our service desk agent, and we'll start off by handing it over to Brian and Connor to do an introduction to what Scout provides.
Awesome. Thank you, Stephen. Yeah, so with Scout, Scout is a agent workforce management platform. So it's this like HR platform of the future is how we think of it, where we're going to be working with all kinds of agents in a bunch of different capacities. And so you can really quickly build these digital team members and then deploy them into the areas where you actually work, like Slack or Teams or anything like that. But also give those agents access to all of your platforms, whether you use Salesforce or ServiceNow or maybe something in the Microsoft stack. You can give your agents access to those tools just like you would give a team member access to those tools. Steve, would it make sense for me to show a few bits on the platform just to give a high level here?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Awesome. Well, I pull that up. We also have Connor on the call from Scout as well.
Nice to meet you all.
Okay, cool. I'll go quickly on this, but this is Scout, and it is an agent workforce management platform. And so we have, some similar stuff you may be seeing with like a Chat GPT or a Claude, where you can talk to an agent and interact with your agents, but you can also build custom agents. And really quickly, I'll just touch on what makes up an agent. So first and foremost, you have your LLM, which is kind of like the intelligence layer of your agent. Then you have your prompt, which you could think of almost like a job description. And then all of the tools that you want to give your agent access to. And so a tool could be anything from, hey, grab this call transcript, do something in HubSpot, post a message in Slack. There are a ton of tools. And there's even a lot of like agent native or Scout native tools, like the ability to build a database, create a CSV, write code, execute code, validate code, all this stuff where the agent actually has like a computer of its own that it's able to use with Scout. This can sometimes be a bit overwhelming for folks. So I got to know like prompt engineering. I need to understand all these different tool pieces. But one of the really awesome pieces here is that we can use agents to help us build agents. And so if I jump over into the main experience, I can just toss in, I just said, hey, build an agent that can help analyze or help citizens access public documents and city data. And so the really, really cool thing, once you have all of your ServiceNows and your Salesforces and all of your systems connected to the platform, or with Scout having access to it, it can now build any agent that you want. This extends to workflows and custom apps and things of that nature as well, but just kind of letting it run through the process here, where its very first step is, hey, I'm going to figure out what tools I have access to and what sort of data is specific to this workspace, and take a swing at building an agent that matches exactly what we're looking to accomplish. So once that's all done, there in a few seconds, we've built our custom agent. So it handled all the prompt engineering for us. It selected a model. One little nuance here with the model selection. I'm sure everybody knows like OpenAI and Anthropic, they're in a race and they're trying to get, always producing the latest and greatest model. So auto is a mode that just dynamically switches to figure out the right model. But in addition to that, it added some tools for the agent to use. And then lastly, I'll just touch on a couple of ways to deploy an agent. So we want to make it where, hey, I don't have to tell the agent to do every single thing every single time, like you would with a Chat GPT. So maybe I want to say, hey, every time you get a new file in your computer, run your task. Or, hey, I want a report of, XYZ data point on my constituents every week or every day. So run your analysis and then send me a message. And then with deployments, here we have Slack and this web copilot enabled. And so within a few seconds, we can go from agent assembled. I'll click a few buttons here to create this copilot, which is like an embeddable widget we could put on a website or embed it somewhere. And then I have my code. So I just add this code to my website, and now I have an agent that, citizens or internal team members can interact with. I know I went through that quick, Stephen. Anything I skipped over too fast?
No, I think that was perfect. So now that everybody has an overview, we'll talk about how we deployed it here in Jefferson County. So let me share my screen. And yeah, thanks, Brian. So a lot of those aspects that Brian touched on is what we used to create our own service desk agent. And one thing Brian mentioned that it can build agents for you. And so we really try to focus on leveraging those aspects to make our system easier to scale and also uniform in how it builds the agents. So whenever people on our team or any of the groups that we're supporting want a new agent, they're always going to interface with an intake agent that we built. And this intake agent is going to break down their pain points, start to build out what the user stories would look like and what functions need to be added to an agent. And this intake agent can hand that build contract to a master builder. And so we have a master builder because this makes sure that every agent we deploy has the same setup. It has the same settings. It's not super bloated, and it makes it easier for auditing when we're looking at what happened. Then we leverage the databases that Brian mentioned to build what's called a system graph. And this is kind of like an asset inventory system where everything that the master builder produces, it adds it to the graph. So at any time when security or auditors want to know what agent has access to ServiceNow, we just go to the system graph and we can say our service desk agent, it's using this workflow, touching these collections. So it's a lot easier than going through and trying to figure out who set it up, what is the agent doing, what access does it have. And because we're leveraging those collections to build kind of a system map in what the ecosystem provides, we can then have a routing agent. So now instead of building one-off agents and interacting with them one-on-one, our users just talk to a router agent. And this router agent looks at the system graph and says, this is an HR question. It needs to go to the HR agent. Or this is a tech question. It needs to go look at these job aids. And then finally, we have an archivist that's just running in the background to maintain that system graph. So basically, this allows us to have one person, one agent that's building agents. And then the humans get to focus on reviewing the builds, focusing on integrations, deployments, and workflows. So for the service desk, what that looked like is we needed something that can answer questions based off of job aids that we have produced. It also needs to understand what a good ServiceNow ticket looks like and be able to submit those. We also had to be careful about prompt injection and misuse, people trying to break the tool. And then finally, we wanted a way to make sure that it wasn't hallucinating, it wasn't just producing information out of its memory, it's actually using documents. And so what we did is we had two architectures set up. One was the agent first path, and then we also did a workflow first path. And I'll show what that looks like later on. But fundamentally, they all shared the same safety gate. They all had the same job aid retrieval tools, and they used the same tools to submit ServiceNow tickets. And since we all work in data constrained environments and safety considerations, it's important to highlight that we were able to do this in a very controlled manner. So all of our tools that we deploy to our customers basically have some kind of safety filter. So if I give an agent to the HR team or the finance team, there's always going to be this safety filter to prevent credential swapping or people trying to just abuse the system. We also have a way to use Scout's workflows to build structured JSON packets to submit our ServiceNow ticket. So instead of a bunch of random comments or maybe poorly formatted comments, it uses a specific tool to say, this is the description, this is the short description, this is the chat history, this is the user. So that way, when the service desk is auditing all their tickets, they have a clean ticket to review instead of just one-off notes or shorthand. We also focus on using the workflows to do the RAG retrieval. So the retrieval augmented generation means that we upload our job aids. Scout has the ability to look through them semantically, find the right document, and then pull it back. And it's important to consider how things can semantically match, because if I say I need to reset my PIN, resetting a pin can touch on multiple different platforms. And so using some of that logic built into Scout, we were able to say, is that your pin for your phone or for your computer or for a WebEx call? And so through the course of our pilot, we were able to get a lot of really good data. In the first week alone, we had over 500 queries, 100 plus testers. And so throughout the course of the pilot, we were able to get a lot of really good lessons learned. And what you'll see is that our job aids tool, it worked perfectly. That was very deterministic, able to call up whatever job aid. The ticket tool, I'll touch on why the completion rate is a little bit lower, but you can still see that it only took 8 seconds to submit a ticket. And then those first two lines being the agent first and workflow first, you can see that the agent had higher completion and higher latency. And that's because agents, with their reasoning, they're able to handle more vague requests, kind of multiple turn questions in a lot cleaner format. But workflows, because they're more deterministic, they're faster. But if there is a multi-turn question, if it accidentally goes down a different path in that logic, it might have to restart. So that's why the completion is a little bit lower. Now, in terms of operational resilience, because Scout's a low-code platform, it's really easy to build agents. You saw Brian build one just in a few seconds. Workflows, they also start off looking kind of scary, but if you've built Empower Automate or Zapier, N8N, any of these other tools, you'll pick it up pretty quickly. So what happened is with our pilot, we deployed the agent-first architecture. A couple days later, the ServiceNow workflow wasn't working quite right. So we rolled over to a full workflow implementation in the same day. And we were able to keep the tool operating at 100% even through that failure because we used the workflows and we're able to rebuild the ServiceNow. And because of how Scout's set up, we have modular architecture. So once you build one website widget or a co-pilot for a website, it's really easy to kind of duplicate that same architecture to other use cases. Now, to kind of highlight the ways that we looked at the value is you can either say our service desk agent was just a really fast way to find information and submit tickets, which is a valid time savings approach. Conversely, you could say, instead of somebody calling the service desk and spending 10 to 15 minutes talking with an actual IT employee, we avoided that cost. So that's why you'll see two different kind of value models, and I'll break it down into the specifics. But fundamentally, it's really time savings versus deflection. So when we look at time savings, this is how you can measure it for your own pilots is you can say, how long does it take to manually find a document? If I need to reset the pin on my phone, that means I have to get onto the SharePoint. I have to look for a PDF. I have to find it, pull out the instructions. And that can take around 3 minutes or so, depending on how messy your SharePoint is. Whereas with an AI assisted tool with like Scout, it's got the documents already in the collections and it's doing that search. So it takes about 10 seconds. Now, those are really small intervals, 180 seconds versus 10 seconds, but that still costs money fundamentally. So if you assume a base rate of $58 per hour, that 180 seconds is basically $2.90 that was spent looking for a PDF. And so that's how you can approach your ROI in terms of time savings. So for us, we saw an average of $2.73 saved in terms of finding documents, submitting ServiceNow tickets. And if you extrapolate that to annual savings, you'll see that the payback period is about 24 days. So that's a pretty conservative estimate. But if we start saying, what happens if we're deflecting actual phone calls? A phone call means I pick up my phone, I call the help desk, maybe I sit on hold, I talk back and forth with the person, and we finally get the issue resolved, or they submit a ServiceNow ticket for me. So that's 10 to 15 minutes of work at my salary plus the IT help desk salary. So you're fundamentally avoiding about $22 to $30 by implementing an AI agent. Same thing with the ticket submissions. A lot of our users have a hard time submitting ServiceNow tickets. And if we can give them an easier way to fill it out, get all of the information recorded accurately, and submit that to the service desk, it makes it easier for our general users, but also the service desk later. So when we look at it in terms of deflecting these actual phone calls in these exchanges, the payback period drops to just a couple of days because we're able to avoid those 10, 15-minute calls. Plus, if there's a surge in maybe an outage or some kind of incident, the service desk only has so many people that can pick up phone calls, whereas an AI agent embedded on a SharePoint page is easy. Anybody can access it within the county. They can get their questions answered. So at a high level overview, the time savings model is kind of a little bit more conservative. You'll see the savings $2.73, whereas deflecting an actual phone call jumps to $20 to $30. In terms of safety, as I mentioned, we did see a lot of prompt injections, people trying to break the tool, make it say weird things, but we were able to mitigate that through the use of an LLM reasoning model that stops, it looks at the input, tries to figure out, is this person messing with me? Is it a legitimate query? And then it passes it on to an actual agent. So by using that filter, we were able to prevent any kind of adverse effects. So what does this mean? All of us have service desks. A really low-cost way to support your team is to give them tools like this agent that can answer questions based on job aids, can help with submitting ServiceNow tickets, or whatever your ticketing platform is. This can be done safely, reliably, and it's transferable between things like the Workday and other desks that you have within your county or city. So with just one more minute, I'll show you what it looked like in the back. With Scout, you get this nice view. This is one of the dashboard views. Since we turned off the pilot last week, it's dropped a lot, but you can see that you can track your sessions over time and it gives you a lot of really cool insights. So this is handy if you wanted to go to a wider range. And while that's loading, you can see it says we had a decline in user engagement, but it'll surface patterns for you also. The actual tool is this. This is a widget. What Connor was talking about is the Copilot. You can embed this in any SharePoint site. So we have a lot of them deployed everywhere from HR to our own internal teams. And then people can just ask questions like, how do I reset my WebEx pin? It also handles multiple languages. So here in our county, we have 4 majorly used languages from Russian, Vietnamese, and Spanish. So I can't speak any of them, but if you wanted to type in Cyrillic, it'll come back and respond in Russian, or likewise with Vietnamese, it'll do the same thing. But you can see that the tool, it's calling up one of its aids, one of the jobs to look up like how to reset the WebEx pin. And if there's nothing, it'll come back and say, I don't have anything, because we don't actually have a document. And then it says, I can submit a ticket for you. And at that point, I can say, no, thanks. How do I call the service desk? And it'll give the user a clickable number that uses the soft phone. So this link right here, when I click on that, it'll activate my WebEx and then transfer me over to them. So this is just one of the many use cases that we have here in the county, and I thought it might be useful for others that have service desks. So thanks.
Okay, do we have any questions for Stephen and/or I do see Sean is asking, is that the full list of triggers? But not sure if you had, I don't think you had addressed that.
Yeah, they have a lot of triggers, so you can set the time-based ones or the file-based ones, but you can also set up webhooks. So sometimes I'll set up webhooks to trigger things like responding to an email or approving an email. So there's a lot of ways to do that.
Yeah.
John, my most common trigger I use internally is every time I complete a phone call, the transcript is the trigger, and it'll trigger a whole bunch of agentic stuff. So those are the easiest deployments, but it's flexible.
Very nice. Stephen, could you speak to why you finalized on using Scout versus like an innate in, or,
Yeah, from the, I mean, Connor touched on it, the compliance and everything is really awesome. But if I was to leave the county, and I handed somebody else N8N, there's no way they could pick that up. Whereas with Scout, because we have this process for where the agents build the agents, they audit themselves, we have testing that's going into place. I can give this to interns and they can build agents for us and understand what's going on in the background. They can pull the reports for us. So it's a really clean and easy way to scale. And it's very cost effective, and the compliance is also really on point.
How are you managing and or have like a plan to manage agent bloat? That is a thing that is,
Mhm.
potentially folks are starting to encounter as they start releasing some of these agents.
Yeah, that's why we have the system graph. So before any agent gets built, the master builder is going to do a check and it's going to see, is there something that's already doing this? And maybe we just need to refine it a little bit, or it'll just outright deny the agent. Because that's one thing that we encountered early on. Everybody wants different kinds of agents, but they're fundamentally doing the same thing. So by having this system in place to check if something is already doing it, we prevent people from building an agent that already exists 3 times over.
Gotcha. Gotcha. What other questions do we have? Jamie, you're coming off mute. Do you have a question?
Yeah, no, this is really awesome. And I'm just curious, speaking of scaling, like what's next, right? Like it sounded like, was that a pilot? And, kind of like, where are you taking this?
Yeah, we've had a lot of these agents already. This was just kind of a more advanced one. What we're doing next is we're looking at 11 labs and doing after hours phone call handling. So our service desk, right now, somebody calls the desk, they get routed to a managed service provider that calls the wrong person that's on call and wakes up like our CIO by accident. So we want to move to an after hours call version of this where this agent will respond, it'll answer questions, transfer you to the service desk. But if you need to actually talk to a human, it's midnight. It'll look at the call roster and then it can either route it to the person, or if you call directly to the service desk, it picks up the phone and then routes it to the right person.
Awesome. Awesome. That sounds great. Wonderful.
And then, Stephen, we've got another question. Do you have any fears of Scout missing key features that other agent platforms have? Sean, could you come off mute and just sort of identify what you mean by other agent platforms, like the features?
Sure. Yeah, I heard Stephen mention Zapier. So maybe, for example, Zapier, do you think Zapier has any features that Scout doesn't? Or our organization is starting with Copilot Studio right now, if you have any
Mhm.
experience with that.
Mhm.
Yeah, we started off with a lot of those other tools last year, like N8N, Zapier, Copilot Studio. And it boiled down to the same things. The Copilot Studio wasn't performing as well as some of the other tools, which is why I looked at N8N and Zapier at first. I would say that so far I haven't ran into anything that I was really missing because you can add TypeScript, you can add webhooks. It has everything that I would need from N8N. And again, it's really easy to build. N8N is really complicated. You have to be technical to build in it. But with this, if you get stuck, there's a little coach in the corner that can talk you through what you're stuck on also. So I haven't ran into any concerns.
And you don't believe it being low code, no code, has any limitations?
For what we're doing here, no.
Okay.
Yeah, for these, I mean, there's obviously very specific use cases where you may need something like training a model or doing more advanced features, but for what we're doing, I don't see that there's any shortcomings.
Yeah, understood. Appreciate it.
Mhm.
And Sean, for context as well, we have a lot of teams that actually don't use any of the no code stuff, and they do everything via the API. I don't know exactly what the split looks like, but we have a very large number of customers that just interact with Scout via the API and don't use any of the low code stuff.
Oh, that's awesome. I didn't realize it had both options. Thanks for that.
Sir.
Okay. Any other questions out there? Okay, gentlemen, thank you. Stephen, always a pleasure.
Thanks,
And
Nicole.
yeah, love to see you have to come back to us and present maybe in another couple of months and see how things have progressed.
Definitely.
All right, amazing. All right, everyone, we have just a little bit of time left. Carrie, you want to spin up some vibe coding and show us what you've been up to? Oh, you're on mute, my friend.
Because my desk is so sensitive. It picked up the space key just from me doing my thing.
From
Yeah,
dancing?
I
Yeah.
have a couple things that I sort of just keyed up so that they'd be available if we had enough time, and I would be happy to share just sort of things that we're doing to learn how to do other things better.
Let's do it.
And my friend Zoom is always so much more difficult for me to share in because we are a Teams shop. So yes, this is the place I want to go first. All right, so now do we see my screen?
We do.
Because I don't see it very well. There we go. All the tools went away. So I will preface this a little bit with this is sort of a first attempt to explain vibe coding to some people on my team. And the CIO here had asked, can we have a budget dashboard? And our new ERP doesn't really have that. And I said, well, I have the data for that already sort of modeled, so I can begin building it. So let me just go to Claude Code and see what I can do. I gave it my data modeled, and I was like, here's some rough data. Tell me what you can do with this. And this part over here on the, I guess right for me and probably left for you guys, is its first attempt to build a dashboard based on just this tiny little bit of information that I gave it, telling it that we are, an encumbrance organization. So it didn't do too bad of a job. And it explained to me exactly what it did and why it did it. And I said, this is probably good for the city treasurer, but let's make this better. It asked me questions of what it should do to make it better based on the response that it gave it. And I keep looking and looking for the second version, which I may have passed. Anyway, Claude is very interesting because it just puts this little sort of button right here in the middle of everything. And you say, switch it up to do this and that, give it more instructions. And it just sticks this button down here, and you all of a sudden have a new thing right over here. And you can actually click in here. It's a full working prototype. You can click around and see what it did. And what I told it was that the chief financial officer is the only person that should see everything, and that other people should not be able to see anything but their own department. So it gave me a new version. It's a little clunky. You have to sign out to be someone else, but it gave me all the things that I asked it for based on, like a project, encumbrance, committed, all those type of budget things that we all follow. So then I told it, I don't like this. Sign in. It's okay. It's okay for a prototype, but in the future, it needs to be SSO. So it gave me that information to do that if I wanted to do that later. Told me all the layers that I need. Told me that if I was using QuickSight, which we do here, that's the AWS version of Power BI, told me what it needs to do and how I need to do that. And oh, it didn't work. The pin didn't work. It said it fixed it. And I believe we're working in the version where that is fixed. So really, you can go into anything and just sort of think about it and read it and say, let's make this change, let's make that change. It's almost like, I don't know, paper dolls. And you can keep making just whatever change. Just don't even have a pin anymore. Okay? Doesn't have a pin anymore. Still working on the pin. I think this version here it's got itself all the way fixed. It got itself through all of these errors. And then I said, oh, maybe I want to share this with some people so that they can give me feedback on it so that I can actually develop this. And it told me everywhere that I could put it, like SharePoint, just put it in S3, a static website, which is something called Amplify, Nginx, or we could make it an internal GitHub page. So it told me all the ways that I could share this with someone else so they could give me feedback and say whether or not they liked all these things. And then it pretty much just gave me some information in there. I said, hey, can this be done in our actual Oracle ERP? Because there is some capability for reporting and dashboarding in there. And it let me know, no, it can't do a budget waterfall. It absolutely cannot do what if scenarios and sliders. You can't have any custom branding. And then you can't have any cross data sources within the Oracle. So it told me where it could do the right thing and where it could not. So this is just a small, short thing that I did with a group of people just to kind of prove out what vibe coding can do, and that you only need one small tool to build a picture this big, right? Because this is a whole overview. It gave an encumbrance page, all of labor and payroll, and a lovely little what if scenario that changes all of your monies as you move the sliders back and forth. So that was the first sort of, I don't know, maybe an hour's worth of plunking around that we did just to validate what vibe coding is, or that it could produce anything that you could take anywhere and have other people look at.
Yeah.
The other thing we did was, this is an active ongoing project for a tourism dashboard that I did sort of the same thing, but I did it in a program called Kiro, which is connected. It's more of an AWS IDE that is AI powered. And I gave my first prompt to Kiro, and it produced this based on the whole huge prompt I gave it. I'm not going to bring up Kiro and do all the stuff because it will take some time, because it does a much more thorough job. But based on everything that I listened to from the city council meeting that I drew this from, this is what it came up with for the very first round. And then I took this to our tourism department, and they said, yeah, we like that, okay, but we want to have an executive page. We don't want them to see all of these details at council and city manager level. So Kiro gave me this guy. Very high level overview type of thing. From between these two and all the talks that we've had, the thing that I liked about Kiro, and what I'm still in the middle of doing with Kiro, is here is the third round, and it is no longer a prototype. I said, Kiro, here's all the safety rules we have at the city of Scottsdale, and I would like you to, within this AWS account, build an application that lets people enter all this campaign information, enter ad buys, put all this good information about them in there. And now this is actually a quick site dashboard embedded in it. And what happens is when you log into it, you get this executive overview page first. But if you're someone on the tourism team, you can go into this detailed analytics page. There's no data in this part yet. I didn't give it any synthetic data because they asked me to make a bunch of changes to it yesterday. But I took that all the way through 2 or 3 iterations, and with the Kiro tool, I was able to make it real. This is real sitting in our dev bucket in AWS. And as soon as I put some data in here, I will be able to give it to the tourism team as a real UAT product. And it took, I don't know, maybe 2 days. So that is the short and sweet of it.
Good stuff. Oh, we do have a question. Jesse, I apologize. I don't know at which point you had asked this. It looks like it was just in the last 2 minutes, but Jesse's asking, what was the prompt that drove this? Are you asking about the first use case or the second, Jesse? It might have been the
Sorry, I'm
tourism.
trying to get off mute. Yeah, the
Oh,
first use case that
okay.
the original, yes.
Okay, the original.
The original prompt for that one, let me see if I could go back and find that. So the original prompt for that one was not even very long. It was very short. It was, I've attached a rough set of presumed data sets built to an executive decision system dashboard to help executive decision makers manage budget. Assume this to be developed in Amorphic, which is our data platform. It's an AWS product using an AWS quick site dashboard. Can you prototype this dashboard? Executives need to be able to see the big picture of their budget, drill into details, and potentially explore how making changes might affect their budgets. Assume budget control and encumbrance, which are styles of accounting. That's it. Very, very short and small.
All
Thank
right.
you very much.
Thanks, Jesse. Any other questions for Carrie? All right, team, we did good today. 259, got 3 different presenters in. So everyone who's working or who's watching, excuse me, we're all working too, but everyone who's watching, we will have the recording a few hours after this. We'll probably send it back out tomorrow. But if there's any questions, you can contact myself, Jamie, Carrie, Hemet. We're all part of your use cases committee. And so send us ideas if you've got any. And if there are any vendors that you are working with who you would like to debut and present with, please send us those as well. So have a great rest of your day, everyone. Thanks for joining.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.